Hi everyone, Allie here from TheFamilyMeeple, and today I am back with the next segment of my top 100 games of all time countdown for 2023. Today we're going to be looking at games 40 through 31. If you haven't checked out the rest of the videos, feel free to give them a glance. They are all listed in a playlist on my YouTube channel. You can check them out. I will also put a link to the introduction video in the description below. You can start there to find out a little bit more about how I put this list together and about the list that I put together in 2021, which is the last time that I did a top 100, and I'll be comparing to that list throughout the selections today. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Coming in at number 40 is a little card game from Tasty Minstrel Games called Solar Draft. Solar Draft was originally published in 2019, and it is designed by Zach Moore with artwork from Katie Welsh. It originally showed up on my list in 2021 at number 35. So this one has dropped 5 places, which pretty much puts it at the same location it was considering how many new games are on the list now. Solar Draft, like I said, is a small box card game, and it is, as the name would imply, a drafting game. In Solar Draft, you will be drafting planet and asteroid cards and moon cards from a central display. On your turn, you're going to take one of 3 actions. You can either play a card from your hand into your solar system, which is a line of cards in front of you, or you can draw a card from the drafting area in the center, or you can terraform a planet. These actions are very simple, but they lead to a lot of depth and strategy in the game where you really have to plan out how you're going to play each of the cards into your solar system. You have to play cards into your solar system in a line moving from left to right. So every card you play is going to be placed to the right of the last card that you played, with very few exceptions. The moons will be added to planets that are already in your solar system, and comets will be added into the line as normal. Most of the planets will want to be arranged in a particular order. So for example, one planet may score by being the 6th planet in your solar system. Or a planet might score based on the number of moons that it has. The comets will also score in different ways, and each of the cards is unique. So you'll be reading the text on the bottom of the card to decide how it's going to play. You'll also be able to earn bonus points at the end for having the most of a particular color of planet. And you'll have a sun in your solar system that gives you a special ability that you can use once per game as well. This is a really fun little drafting game that I don't know that a lot of people have heard of. It doesn't have a solo mode, so it is one that you'll need to play with other people, although it is fairly simple, despite the fact that you will be needing to read a lot of card text. So it is fairly text heavy, and it's not one that's great for young kids, but I would say if you have a confident reader, then they'll do fine with this game. The artwork is absolutely adorable. In fact, it's one of my favorite things about the game. For example, all of the blue planets look sad, and all of the red planets look angry. The comets and the asteroids in the game are actually dogs and cats, which is super funny and really cute. The game plays very quickly. You'll play until one player has reached a certain number of planets. I believe it's 9 in their solar system, and then the game will end. You'll add up points based on how well you achieve the objective of all of the cards that are in your solar system, and the player with the most points wins. This is one I highly recommend you check out if you have a chance to, if you can get your hands on a copy, or if you see it at a convention somewhere, give it a try. It might be hard to get a hold of now because of Tasty Minstrel going out of business, but it's definitely one that I've enjoyed and would recommend to others. So that is my number 40 Solar Draft. Number 39 is Reef. Reef was designed by Emerson Matsuuchi and published by Plan B Games. It is illustrated by Chris Quilliams, and it was published originally in 2020. Reef appeared on my list in 2021 at number 39, so it actually has not changed at all. It is in the exact same spot that it was at that time. Reef is an abstract strategy game that is originally designed for 2 to 4 players. There is a solo variant that you can find on Board Game Geek, which is decent, and it's worth giving it a try just to kind of get your feet wet and check out the game. It's a very simple game, but it adds a lot of strategy. It definitely feels like a game from Emerson Matsuuchi in that the rule set is extremely simple, but it gives players the ability to really plan out their turns and look ahead, and a lot of agency in how you're playing the game. So in Reef, each player is going to have a small reef board that they'll place in front of them. Your reef board will start out with one of each of 4 colors of coral in the center 4 places. And you can pick however these are arranged on your personal board. Then you'll start with a hand of, I believe, 2 cards. There's also going to be a display of cards in the center where you're going to be able to draft these scoring objective cards. On your turn, you'll take one of 2 actions. You can either draw a card from the central display and draft it into your hand, or you can play a card from your hand. If you play a card from your hand, the top half of the card will display a number of coral pieces, which you will take from the supply and add to your coral reef. You can either add them to new empty spaces, or you can stack them on top of previously placed coral pieces. Once you've added the coral to your reef, then the bottom part of your card will show you a specific objective for scoring. You'll score based on a top-down view of your personal reef board, and you can score a number of times depending on how many times the pattern that's indicated on the card is repeated in your coral reef. So for example, your card might say that you need a blue coral piece next to a yellow coral piece. And for every time that you can do this with unique pieces of coral, you'll score the points indicated. That card will be discarded from your hand, and then the next player will take a turn. The cards that you're drafting from the center of the table will come from the top of the draw pile of cards. You can draft any of the cards in the actual row for free, or if you want to take the card that's on the top of the deck, then you have to place one of your victory point tokens onto the card with the lowest point value on it in the row. If you draft a card from the row that has any point tokens on it, you will collect those point tokens. So you'll want to be very careful about how you avoid the cards in the center and add point tokens, because your opponent will definitely draft those at some point. The fun part of Reef for me is that there is a disconnect between the coral that you add from the cards to the coral that you're going to be scoring. So for example, if the card is going to score for yellow and blue coral pieces, you're not going to add yellow or blue coral pieces at the beginning of that turn. You'll typically be adding either the gray or the purple pieces instead. So you have to be very careful as you add these pieces to your reef that you don't mess up the scoring arrangement that you've already created for the bottom half of the card. The game plays over a number of rounds until one or more of the coral supplies has run out. So you'll use a set number of coral pieces depending on the player count. Like I said, there is a solo variant that's available on Board Game Geek, and it is a good one. It's worth playing, but this game is definitely one that you can play with any number of people. There is no reading required. It's all language independent, so as long as you have someone there who can read the rules and teach it, it's a simple one to pick up, very quick to play. It looks beautiful on the table, and those coral pieces are chunky and very satisfying to work with. It's definitely one of my favorite games from Emerson Matsuuchi, so that is my number 39, Reef. Number 38 is a game from Grandpa Beck's Games called The Bears and the Bees. The Bears and the Bees was published in 2018. It was designed by Jeffrey Beck with artwork from David Bach and April Stott. This game originally showed up on my list in 2021 at number 51, so this game has actually risen 13 places on my list since the last time that I made it. The Bears and the Bees is a small box card game that features tile placement and a hand shedding mechanic. These are both game mechanics that I really enjoy in games. I love tile placement, which I'm sure you'll notice there's a lot of tile placement games on my list. And I love traditional hand shedding games. I used to enjoy playing games like Rummy and Phase 10, and there's still games that I wouldn't turn down if someone wanted to play them. They're just classic, they're great family games, and they're always a lot of fun. They're also really easy to pick up, and The Bears and the Bees is certainly a game in this line. It's a family weight game, and anyone can play it. It's one that I've gifted quite a bit, and when I introduce it to people, they typically go out and buy a copy for their family as well. In The Bears and the Bees, you will be playing with hexagonal-shaped cards. So they're kind of like hexagon tiles, but they're cards instead. You'll mix all of these up and add a queen bee card to the center of the table. Then you'll deal out a number of cards to each of the players based on the player count. Your objective on your turn is going to be to add a card from your hand to the honeycomb display that you are building out in the center. Each of the cards is a cell of the honeycomb, and there will be different colors on the edges of the card. So there's several different types of cards in the game. Some of them will have special abilities and some of them will not. If you manage to play a card that is adjacent to 3 or more cards, you can actually earn yourself bonus turns. So if you plan it out correctly, you can shed several cards from your hand on one turn. The B cards will also help you do things like place cards more easily, force opponents to draw an additional card, and there's flower cards that are all one color around the edge that are going to be challenging to place, but if you can place them, again, you're going to start penalizing the other people around you by being able to give them cards from your hand, I believe. And then there's also bear cards, which you will place adjacent to the wild honey side of a card. And then once a bear has been placed, you can't place anything around it in the future, so you can no longer build on those spots. It blocks them off. Your objective, like I said, is to get rid of all of the cards in your hand before the other players do. Any cards that are left in your hand when someone goes out are worth points, and the player with the least points is going to be the winner after a number of rounds. You can play a single round, but it's such a quick playing game that we'll typically play multiple rounds and then add up the scores together. The different special cards are going to be worth more, so you really don't want to get stuck with a bear card in your hand or a flower card in your hand. But it's really quick, very easy to play. I love the puzzly nature of the tile placement because all of the sides of the card have to match when you place it out into the honeycomb structure that you're building. It looks absolutely stunning once you have it built out on the table, and it's one that I will likely never get rid of in our collection. There is a second edition of the game that we don't have, but it's basically the same game, just a little bit of updated artwork. If you're interested, I would certainly consider checking this one out. Again, this is from Grandpa Beck's Games, called The Bears and the Bees. That is my number 38. Number 37 is the first new game to the list in this section, and it is Libertalia Winds of Galecrest. Libertalia Winds of Galecrest is designed by Paolo Mori with artwork from Lamaro Smith, and it was published by Stonemaier Games. This game is new to the list because it was published in 2022. Libertalia Winds of Galecrest is a second edition of the original game Libertalia. Libertalia Winds of Galecrest is a little bit of a modified version of the game. They've made some tweaks and adjustments to it from the first edition, and one of the tweaks and adjustments that they included in it, which is why I originally picked it up, was that they added a solo mode. The original game did not include a solo mode, and I don't believe it played very well at 2, so this new second edition includes both a solo mode as well as a 2-player version that adds a midshipman character to simulate a little bit of having a third player in the game. Libertalia Winds of Galecrest is at its heart a card game. In the game, all of the players are going to have the same hand of character cards to start out. And on your turn, you are going to secretly select one of the cards to play. Once everyone's selected a card, then you'll flip the card over and you'll arrange your characters out on the island board in the center of the table in order based on the number. Now, because you start with the same characters in your hand, it is possible that one or more player will play the same character card. In this case, you will have a reputation track on the board, and you will place the characters out following the reputation track. Once everyone's placed their characters out on the island, then you will move across the island and activate the characters from left to right. The characters with the lower numbers will give you the ability to take their actions first, which can be beneficial depending on what those actions are. A lot of the actions will interact with the other players, or interact with the island, or interact with the treasures that you're going to be collecting. Once you've activated everyone's daytime ability by moving from left to right, you'll then turn back and you will retrieve your character from the island, coming back from right to left. At this time, you're going to collect a treasure from that particular day of the voyage. And the treasure tokens will all do slightly different things. A lot of them will just earn you gold to be collected at the end of the voyage, but some of them are going to actually be worth negative points at the end. So you can get cursed treasure or cursed relics, and those will make you lose points. So depending on what treasures are out on each of the days, it will dictate how you want to play the characters that are in your hand as well. You may not want to collect treasures last if there's a bunch of cursed relics on the island for that day. Once everyone's drawn all of their characters back and collected their loot tokens, then you will activate any nighttime abilities that you have on your characters. And then once those have been done, you will move forward to the next day in that particular voyage. At the end of the first voyage, you will actually have some cards left over in your hand. Everyone potentially will have different cards left over in their hand from the original cards that were drawn. You'll then add new cards to your hand. Everyone's going to add the same ones, but as you can tell, your hands start to become a little bit different because some people will have characters left over from the first voyage that they didn't use that maybe you did. In the second voyage, you're going to play it out exactly the same way, and then you will add additional characters to your hand for the third and final voyage, play it out as well, and at the end of the game, the player with the most doubloons or gold will win. This is a really fun game. I've actually only played it solo so far, but it was one of my favorite solo games from 2022. The solo mode works really well, and it's one that I definitely had a great time with. It was included on one of my solo challenges, so if you want to hear more about how the solo mode works exactly, I would encourage you to check out my solo challenges playlist and find more information about it there. But it does work with an AI card system that was designed by the Automa Factory, so if you like solo modes from Automa Factory, it's definitely one that works really well and is a fantastic implementation like most of theirs have been. So that is my number 37, Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest. Coming in at number 36 is another game that was on my list in 2021. This is Realm of Sand. Realm of Sand was designed by Ji-Hua Wei. The artwork is from Meisherly, and it was published by Emperor S4 and Deepwater Games. This game was designed in 2018, and in 2021, it appeared on my list at number 20, so it has dropped about 16 places, which is not very much. Realm of Sand is another game that I picked up along with Hanamikoji and Mystery of the Temples, which I have talked about on earlier sections of this list. It is one of the ones that came over through Deepwater Games from Emperor S4. Realm of Sand is a polyomino tile placement game, which is one of the reasons why I enjoy it so much. It's sort of, in my mind, a mix of Splendor and Patchwork. So in Realm of Sand, you will have a circular arrangement of these polyomino tiles in front of you, and in the center of the circle, you will arrange 3 different sets of objective cards. And the objective cards will be increasingly difficult to achieve as they go down. So the cards in the first set are fairly simple, then they get a little bit harder and a little bit harder still in the third set. Realm of Sand is a game that I've only played solo. It does include a solo mode, and it is such a fun little polyomino puzzle game. So on your turn, what you're going to do is select a tile by moving the marker around the circle of polyominoes in front of you. Once you've selected a tile, then you are going to actually create that pattern on your individual player board with individual square colored tiles. So you won't actually place the polyomino tile that you drafted onto your board. You'll create that pattern with square tiles instead. And this will become important later when you're completing objective cards. So you'll draft the tile, create the pattern on your board, and then you will be able to potentially complete objective cards from the center if you've matched the pattern of the building. So you'll compare your board to the objective cards in the center, and if you can complete one of the cards, then you will complete it and you'll earn those points. When you complete a card, you'll actually clear those tokens and tiles off of your board and clear out that space so that you can continue building out more of the patterns that are on the cards in front of you. The cards in the top row are worth a small number of victory points. As you get into the second and third row of patterns, then you will be able to earn additional victory points for those. As I said, they are more difficult to complete and slightly larger to complete on your board. Along with receiving victory points, you will potentially be receiving tokens that you can use in place of the polyomino tiles that you're placing out. In fact, you will need to collect some of these tokens because some of the buildings will require blue and yellow resources that you can't get from the tiles that you're drafting. So the tiles that you're drafting only have green, red, and black on them, but there are also requirements to have blue and yellow on your board. So you'll need to collect some of those first level cards in order to get those tokens in order to play them out onto your player board. Realm of Sand is one that I don't think a lot of people have heard of. This is another sort of hidden gem game for me, but it's so much fun. It's one that's very simple. You could easily introduce this to new gamers, to children probably in the range of like 8 and older. There isn't any reading or language dependence, so as long as you can teach them the rules, which are pretty simple, anyone could play this game. That is my number 36, Realm of Sand. All right, continuing my love of tile placement games, coming in at number 35 is a new game to the list. This is New York Zoo. New York Zoo was designed by Uwe Rosenberg. It was illustrated by Felix Wermke, and the publisher is Feuerland Spiele and Capstone Games. New York Zoo was published in 2021, but it isn't one that I had picked up at the time. I remember seeing the cover for the game and thinking it looked absolutely adorable because it was a zoo-themed game, but I didn't pick it up at that time. I waited until sort of people had started talking about it and knew more about it. So New York Zoo, like I said, is a polyomino tile placement game, and it is a racing game. Each player will get a zoo board that they'll place in front of them, and your goal, your only objective, is to complete your board, entirely fill it with tiles before the other player. The first player to finish their board wins. One of the things that you're going to be doing during the game is moving an elephant marker or meeple around this rondel board. And the rondel board, depending on where you stop with the elephant, will allow you to either draft enclosure tiles, which are polyomino tiles, to add into your zoo and add animals to it, or it will allow you to collect animal meeples in order to have them to add into your different zoo displays. There are several places on this rondel board where when you pass it, you will breed your animals. So any paddocks that you have or enclosures that you have that have 2 or more animals in them will breed an additional animal. Every time that you get one of your enclosures completely filled with an animal, then you will be able to clear it out You'll be able to keep one or two, I think, of the animals. You'll clear it out, and then you'll be able to take an attraction tile from the center. And some of these are really large and will help you fill in spaces more quickly. And then some of them are really little and will help you fill in gaps that you may have created with your other tile placements throughout the game. There's a few kind of funky rules when it comes to the breeding phases that takes a little bit of wrapping your head around, but it's nothing too complex, and it's definitely a game that newer players or families would be able to handle without any difficulties. New York Zoo also includes a solo mode in the box. It is a fun solo mode. It's one that I enjoy. I have also covered this one in one of my solo challenge videos, so you can, again, check those out if you're interested in the solo specifically. It's definitely one that I would pull out for solo. It's very relaxing, but I really do enjoy this one more at multiplayer because the race aspect of it is super tense. And every time that we've played it, it's come down to basically like one turn between the players. So it'll be somebody gets that last tile and you were only a single turn away from getting the last one to fill your board as well. So I love the tightness of the race in this game. It adds a nice level of tension. And the animal meeples that you're playing in your boards are just super cute. I actually bought stickers for mine, which makes them even cuter. And it is just a fantastic little tile placement game. It's definitely one to check out. That is my number 35, New York Zoo. Number 34 is Sheep and Thief. Sheep and Thief is a game that was published in 2014. It was designed by Yuichi Sakashita, and it has artwork from Wei Yi Chong and Tansen Inc. It was published from Pegasus Spiel. It did originally appear on my list in 2021 at number 36, so it has actually gone up 2 places since I created this list in 2021. Sheep and Thief is a drafting and card or tile placement game. Again, you'll probably see a theme here on tile placement and drafting. But in Sheep and Thief, you will be drafting cards that have pathways and sheep and sheepdogs and foxes on them. And after you've drafted the cards by passing them around in a clockwise or counterclockwise manner, depending on the round, you will then place these cards out onto your individual player boards, which are your farm. Your objective is to collect sheep by playing cards that have sheep on them, to move those sheep into your different barns by playing cards that have the sheep dogs on them, and to play cards with the fox on them in order to move the fox on your own player board as well as the player boards of all of the other players, in the hopes of moving the fox onto another player's card that has sheep on it, and then you can steal those sheep. Those will score points for you at the end of the game. If you move the fox onto one of your own cards with sheep, those sheep get eaten and they will not score for anyone at the end of the game. You'll also be working to create rivers through your farm, as well as to create a continuous connecting road from the top of your player board down to the other corners of your player board. You will earn points for all of the connections that you can make. Sheep and Thief is an extremely simple drafting and tile placement game. It plays very quickly over just 3 rounds. I believe you're placing 4 cards on each of those rounds, so you won't quite finish out your board. But it's one that we have really enjoyed. It plays for younger kids as well as adults. It does a good job for playing with mixed age groups. So if you have a family that has maybe younger or middle elementary school age kids, probably 6-7-year-olds could handle this game fairly easily with a small amount of help, but 8 and up could definitely play this one. Rory has played it, and actually Emmy has played this one as well. If you have grandparents or aunts and uncles, even people that maybe don't play a lot of games, this is a great one to introduce them to. Certainly an introductory game for the board game hobby. This is another one that may be slightly hard to get a hold of, but if you have the opportunity to play it, to check it out, I highly recommend it. It's one that won't be leaving our collection just because I, again, tracked it down and it's not the easiest one to find these days. But it's a fantastic game. I love the little sheep. I love the fox meeples. The artwork is fantastic, and we have had a ton of fun with this one. So that is my number 34, Sheep and Thief. Number 33 is another game from Pencil First Games. This is the Whatnot Cabinet. The Whatnot Cabinet was designed by Eduardo Baroff, Steve Finn, and Keith Matejka. The artwork was from Kim Robinson and Beth Sobel. The Whatnot Cabinet was published in 2021, and it is new to my list because I did not own it in 2021 when I created my first list. The Whatnot Cabinet is a tile drafting and placement game where you are actually going to be drafting these little square tiles that have curiosities on them. So it'll be a vase or a shell or an animal or a plant like a leaf. And you'll be adding them into your personal player board, which is a cabinet in front of you. The game plays very quickly over a small number of rounds. In each of the rounds, you're going to be drafting 2 tiles and adding them into your cabinet. Your goal is to place the tiles in such a way that you create columns and rows where the colors are either all the same or all different, and the objects are either all the same or all different. So the columns themselves, you're going to be looking for colors, and the rows you are going to be looking for objects. If you can achieve either of those 2 goals, then you'll score points for that row or column when they're finished. If you haven't done that, then those columns and rows will score 0 points at the end of the game. The Whatnot Cabinet has a really fun action selection mechanism using a board in the center. So everyone will have 1 or 2 action pawns depending on the number of players. And on your turn, you will actually be playing turns, not in a clockwise manner, but whoever has their pawn on the farthest left space from the previous round, they will go first. And you will place your pawn on one of the 5 locations on the board. The locations on the left give you very little agency in what you're drafting. So for example, with that one, I believe you're going to be pulling 3 tiles blindly out of the bag, and you have to place 2 of them. So this is not a bad way to go at the beginning of the game, but as you get deeper into the game, it can be very risky to blind draw out of the bag. If you go all the way to the right, you will have far more agency in being able to get the tiles that you actually need in order to complete the rows and columns of your cabinet, but you'll go last in the next round. If you actually take any of the first 3 actions in the very last round of the game, you'll earn additional victory points at the end of the game for taking that level of risk. There are also some objective cards at the top of the player area that you'll be working to achieve in a little bit of a race. The first person to achieve it will earn the victory points for that card. The Whatnot Cabinet is an absolutely beautiful little game. It comes in a relatively small box. It's simple to teach to pretty much anyone. It's another game where you don't have to have any language dependence or reading in order to play it. Rory absolutely loves this game. She asks to play it regularly, and it plays very quickly. So if you've got any kids probably 7 years old and up, they can definitely play the Whatnot Cabinet. I've played it with my friends, I've played it with my mom, and it also includes a solo mode, which I have played quite a bit. The solo mode is extremely quick, it's very easy to run, it doesn't require any sort of crazy overhead. It's more or less just a beat your own score mode, but it's just super relaxing given the fact that it can be very stressful and you won't get what you need at the end. It still is quite a relaxing game. If you're looking for something a little bit more challenging, there is also a fan-made solo mode available through Board Game Geek that I've had a lot of fun with as well, and it gives you an actual opponent to score against who will be collecting curiosities for their own Whatnot cabinet as well. So that is my number 33, the Whatnot Cabinet. Number 32 is another new game to the list. This is Space Explorers. Space Explorers was designed by Yuri Zurovlajov and with artwork from Alexei Kot. It was published by Crowd Games, and in the States it is published and distributed by 25th Century Games. Space Explorers was published in 2017. Space Explorers is another game that I find to be quite similar to Splendor, if you have played Splendor before, in that you will be trying to achieve specific objectives and purchasing cards to add into your own personal tableau. And as you build out the tableau of cards in front of you, you will actually decrease the cost of collecting cards from the drafting row as you move forward. So it has a lot of similarities to Splendor, but I really like the artwork in this game, and that's actually the first thing that drew me into it. I love sort of the 1920s space exploration look of the game, and it has a lot of sort of unique mechanics that I have found really intriguing. Space Explorers is one that I've only played solo so far. It's one that I definitely need to teach to my mom the next time that she visits because it's not super complex and it's one that I think she might enjoy. So in Space Explorers, you are trying to collect or recruit people to join your called your hub, and you will do so by paying either tokens from in front of you that match their cost, or by having previously recruited people into the same section of your hub. So for example, if it's a blue card out in the center and you've already recruited 3 blue cards into your personal hub, then you will actually be able to discount the first 3 tokens or symbols from the bottom, and you won't have to pay those to recruit that next one into your hub. A lot of the recruits that you'll be adding to your hub will have a special ability that's listed at the bottom. As you recruit additional people to your hub, you'll cover those cards up and those abilities will go away. So there's a lot of planning that takes place in managing recruiting to a section of your hub that you've already started recruiting into for those discounts, but also simultaneously not wanting to cover up the abilities at the wrong time and not be able to use them. You'll also be trying to collect space projects, which are all telescopes, I believe, or satellites, and you'll have to have recruited a set number of different colors into your hub in order to recruit them. So maybe 2 yellows, 2 blues, and 2 reds. In that way, it's very similar to Splendor as well. You'll play out until players have, I think, recruited their 12th specialist into their hub, and then you will count up the points on each of your specialist cards that are in your hub. Most of them will score straight points, but some will score based on other cards that you've recruited throughout the game. It actually plays pretty quickly. The solo is insanely challenging. I have rarely, if ever, I think, beaten the solo player. It is an AI opponent who will recruit on every single turn, so it stresses the importance of not wasting a lot of turns in the game and trying to be able to recruit someone basically on every single turn, if at all possible. There is also an expansion to this game called Age of Ambition, which I was fortunate enough to be sent an advance copy to check out and share last year. It was kickstarted last year and should be delivering, I think, here pretty soon for the expansion. The expansion is a modular expansion. It adds different, some very large modules that change up the game and some smaller modules that just kind of tweak the gameplay a little bit. You can mix and match them. They actually recommend that you play with, I think, 3 at a time mixed into the game. And all of those come with an increased or enhanced solo mode version that was based on the original. I have played through all of the modules in the expansion, and it honestly just made the game better for me. And it's one that I look forward to continuing to play and getting my Kickstarter copy of the expansion with my wooden resource bit tokens and the bags and all of the nice upgraded bits. So that is my number 32, Space Explorers. Rounding out the list today, coming in at 31, is yet another new game on the list, and this is Hats. Hats was published by Thundergriff Games. The designer is Gabriele Bubola, and the artwork is from Paolo Voto. Hats was originally published in 2019. Hats is a very simple small box card game that I saw in a playthrough and decided to add to a Kickstarter pledge from Thunderworks Games, or Thundergriff Games. So in Hats, players will be creating a tableau of cards in front of them by exchanging hats from their hand of cards with the table board that's in the center of the table. So on your turn, you will take a card from your hand, and most of the time you are going to exchange it with a card that's on the board in the center, which looks like the Mad Hatter's Tea Party table. And to exchange a card, it has to meet one of two conditions. It has to be the same color as the card you're exchanging it for, or it has to be a higher value. So I can exchange any pink card for any other pink card on the table. I'll take the pink card from my hand, replace the pink card on the table, and the card that was on the table goes into my display in front of me. Or I could exchange, for example, a 6 green card for a 3 pink card and take the pink card into my collection in front of me. At the end of the game, players are going to score for the cards that are in front of them that they've collected. Cards will then score based on the position of that color on the table in the center board. So as you're exchanging these cards from your hand and collecting the cards from the table, you're also manipulating the value of that color of hat at the end of the game. For example, if at the end of the game you've collected 3 green hat cards, but there are no green hats on the table board in the center, those green hats that you collected are worth no points at the end of the game. So you want to be very careful on how you're exchanging these hats and watching what the other players are doing as well. If there are 2 of the same hat color on the table, those hats will score for the lower value instead of the higher value. So that's also something to keep in mind. You will also be saving 1 card in hand until the end of the game, which is considered your favorite hat. And this card you want to be a very low value card. You will subtract the value of the favorite hat card in your hand from the sum of that color hat that you've collected throughout the game, and you will earn points in that way. The player with the most unique colors of hats will also earn points at the end of the game by getting the cookie, which is worth 5 points. Hats is an extremely quick playing and easy to learn game that I have had great success with teaching to all sorts of different people. This is one of my favorite filler games to pull out at the end of the night if we've just finished playing a game. We have, 5, 10, 15 minutes left and we just want to play something quick and easy. The artwork is absolutely gorgeous, absolutely fantastic looking game on the table. You can play it in about 5 to 10 minutes at most. And it is rare that I've ever taught this game to someone where they haven't turned around and said, again, let's play again. Because that first game, when you teach them, the moves are extremely simple. Exchange a card from the center table and collect the card that was on the table. But the strategy of why you would exchange particular cards and collect particular cards and how you plan out your hand is just so much fun, and you really won't get that in the first game. And that's why people tend to say, okay, I get it now after you do that first scoring, and they want to play again right away. Once you've played that first hand and you get into the second round of it, then the scores tend to be really, really tight. We usually are having scores in the 20s, and we're within, probably 5-point spread across the group. Hats plays from 2 to 4 players. At 2 and 3 players, it plays exactly the same way, and everyone will play as an individual player. If you're playing with 4 players, then you will actually play as teams. I haven't played the 4-player mode yet, but I have played 2 and 3 players, and it works excellent at both of those player counts. So that will wrap it up for us today at number 31, Hats. Thanks so much for coming back for this section of the list. This has been so much fun to do so far, and I'm really looking forward to the last 3 videos coming up. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel, like the video, and comment below what are your favorite games of all time in this 40 to 31 section, or are any of these on your list for your top 100? If not, tell me what might be. Until next time, please continue to have fun playing games with your family, your friends, and even solo. Bye.